Absence of war is by no means a state of peace. Hello, and welcome back to Silk and Steel, where we dissect the intricate dance of global power. This is your host, Donica DeQuella, and today we're diving back into the murky waters of the Red Sea for part 2 of our analysis. In our last episode, we discussed the sudden, almost eerie silence that has fallen over the Red Sea. We explored for possible courses. 1. The back-channel regional deals. 2. Coalition naval strength. 3. Iran's hand. 4. The Houthis' practical need to replenish their dwindling arsenals contributed to this pause. It seemed like a straightforward case of tactical exhaustion and local diplomacy. But as we often find in geopolitics, the simplest explanation is rarely the complete one. What if this quiet is not just a break, but a carefully orchestrated maneuver? What if the strings are being pulled by powers far beyond the immediate region? Today, we peel back another layer to reveal the hidden hands of Russia and China in this strategic pause. Let's start by framing the situation. For months, the Red Sea was a cauldron of conflict. Houthi attacks on commercial shipping sent shockwaves through the global economy, rerouting trade and hiking insurance costs. The international response, led by the US and its allies, was swift but ultimately unable to completely neutralize the threat. Then, almost overnight, the attacks stopped. The world breathed a collective sigh of relief. But in the world of grand strategy, a vacuum of action is often more significant than the action itself. This silence is a strategic asset, and Russia and China are masters at exploiting such assets. To understand their involvement, we need to look at their overarching goals. Both Moscow and Beijing are invested in challenging the current US-led global order. They seek a multipolar world where their influence is not constrained by Western dominance. The Red Sea crisis presented a perfect opportunity. The Houthi attacks exposed the limits of American naval power and highlighted the vulnerability of global supply chains, a system largely underwritten by US security guarantees. For Russia and China, this was a win-win. The chaos benefited them without them having to fire a single shot. It diverted American attention and resources, stretched its military, and created friction between Washington and its allies, who were divided on how best to respond. So, why would they want the chaos to stop? This is where the genius of their strategy lies. The goal was never to let the situation spiral into a full-blown regional war that could disrupt their own economic interests, particularly China's trade through the Suez Canal. The objective was to demonstrate the fragility of the system, not to break it entirely. Now that the point has been made, the value lies not in continued conflict, but in the preservation of the tool that caused the disruption the Houthis themselves. Think of it from their perspective. A weakened but not defeated Houthi movement is an incredibly valuable strategic pawn. By encouraging or facilitating a pause now, Russia and China ensure the Houthis can survive, rearm, and remain a potent force. They become a dormant threat, a problem in a box that can be unleashed again whenever it serves Moscow or Beijing's interests. Imagine a future crisis, perhaps in the South China Sea or Eastern Europe. The ability to reactivate the Red Sea crisis, to create a second front that diverts Western resources and attention is an incredibly powerful lever. It's strategic blackmail on a global scale. This pause isn't about peace. It is about reloading the gun and keeping it pointed at a vital artery of the world economy. How are they achieving this? Through diplomacy and influence. Russia has been expanding its diplomatic footprint in the Middle East for years, positioning itself as a mediator that can talk to all sides, including Iran. The Houthis' primary backer, China, with its immense economic leverage, has also been playing a more active diplomatic role. As we saw with the landmark deal it brokered between Saudi Arabia and Iran, both countries have quietly used their influence to signal to Tehran and, by extension, the Houthis, that now is the time for de-escalation. They can frame it as a victory. The Houthis stood up to the West and survived. This narrative allows the Houthis to claim success while preserving their capabilities for a future fight. Furthermore, this strategic pause allows Russia and China to pursue their end games in other theaters. For Russia, the primary focus remains Ukraine. Any distraction for the West is a blessing. By dialing down the temperature in the Red Sea, they ensure that Western political and military bandwidth isn't stretched even thinner, which might paradoxically lead to a more desperate and unpredictable response in Ukraine. Moscow wants a long, grinding war of attrition, where its industrial base can outlast the West's political will to supply KYV, a stable, albeit tense, global environment outside of Ukraine helps them manage this long-term strategy. The pause in the Red Sea buys them time and focus. For China, the calculus is slightly different, but equally strategic. Beijing's primary concerns are its own economy and the simmering issue of Taiwan. Uncontrolled chaos in the Red Sea directly impacts the flow of goods to and from Europe, a vital trading partner. A temporary, controlled calm restores a level of predictability that Chinese businesses need. More importantly, it allows Beijing to observe. They have just witnessed a live-fire demonstration of how a relatively small, non-state actor can hold global trade hostage and challenge the world's most powerful navy. This is invaluable data for their own military planners. Thinking about potential contingencies in the Taiwan Strait or the South China Sea, they've seen the playbook, and the pause allows them to analyze its effectiveness without the situation escalating into a direct confrontation that they are not yet ready for. So, while the surface appears calm, the undercurrents are swirling with strategic intent. The Red Sea pause is not an end to the crisis, but a transition to a new phase. It's a shift from overt conflict to latent threat. Russia and China are not acting as peacekeepers out of altruism. They are acting as grand strategists, preserving a key asset for future use. They are leveraging the silence in one part of the world to better position themselves for their ultimate objectives elsewhere. The Houthis are being kept in reserve, a strategic card to be played when the stakes are highest on the global chessboard. As we look ahead, we must resist the temptation to see this quiet as a return to normalcy. Instead, we should see it for what it is, the eye of the storm. The fundamental issues have not been resolved. The Houthis remain armed and ideologically committed. The geopolitical competition between the great powers is only intensifying. This period of calm is fragile and, more importantly, It is purposeful. The real question is not if the crisis will return, but when, and at whose command. The waves may be quiet for now, but the architects of a new world order are busy in the shadows, ensuring that when the time is right, they will be the ones to command the storm. The silence in the Red Sea is loud, if you know how to listen. And that brings us to the end of our analysis for today. The story of the Red Sea is a stark reminder that in the 21st century, conflicts are interconnected, and the actions of regional players are often intertwined with the ambitions of global powers. What happens in one corner of the world has ripples everywhere. As always, this is your host, Donica DeQuella, signing off. Thank you for joining me on Silk and Steel. If you find this analysis valuable, please subscribe and share our content. It is the best way to help our voice be heard and to continue exploring the forces that shape our world. We'll see you in the next episode.